We are just about to go live to the wider world. We are live to the wider world, and it is 7 o'clock. So, welcome to the Planning Committee, Ealing Planning Committee on the Wednesday, 24th of April. And it's 7 o'clock start. Just for anyone that hasn't been here, the committee are to my left and right. Officers are to my immediate left and right on the top table here. Members of the public are in the gallery or the space behind that table where the speakers come up and speak. Okay, we've got 2 items on the agenda tonight. Let me go through the agenda. Okay. Any apologies for absence? Substitutions? We should mention the substitutions.
So we have 2 substitutions. Councillor Yor Gordon is substituting for Councillor Aisha Raza, and Councillor Javed Mohammed Iqbal is substituting for Councillor Safraz Khan.
And thank you for substitution, particularly at last minute for Councillor Iqbal. So any urgent matters? I'm not aware of any. No? Right, okay. Any declarations of interest? No, okay. Any matters to be considered in private, which I am not aware of any, and I'm not seeing any indication of any. Thank you. Right, minutes of the last meeting on the 28th of February. Is it 28th of February was the last meeting? Anyway, that's what's on the agenda. So, okay. Agreed. Agreed, thank you. Site visit attendance. Let's get back to site visit attendance. So, right, okay, let me read them out. Myself as chair, Councillor Sahota, Councillor Driscoll, Councillor Mahmood, Councillor Padda, Councillor Shaw, Councillor Summers, Councillor Busuttil, and Councillor Young. Have I missed anyone? No, and apologies from all the rest. Thank you. Right, okay. I'll move on without further ado to number 1, the item on the agenda tonight. I'm going to take them in the order they are on the agenda. 42 Hastings Road. Okay, it's Greg, is it introducing us? Greg?
I'm a virtual chair.
Oh, right. Right, thank you, virtual. So, yes, if you would like to introduce Greg, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll share my screen. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and members of the committee. Am I sharing?
Not yet.
Okay. Hang on.
We can see ourselves at the moment.
It says I am. Okay. Let me just minimize this. Ah, I have it now. You can see the screen now, Chair. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So the site address 42 Hastings Road and 50 to 54 Drayton Green Road. Chair, a bit of context so far as the site is concerned. Members not acquainted with the location. Comprises the Majestic wine store, the store to that unit, and part of a small group of single-storey retail units fronting onto Drayton Green Road, which is this road here, and West Ealing Crossrail Station, where the cursor is hovering, and an extract from the proposal's map showing that the site forms part of the identified Ealing Metropolitan Town Centre. Some background photographs here, a view of the site from Drayton Green Road, Alexandra Road Junction, showing the existing small shop units to the left of the Majestic Wine Store. Another photograph of the Majestic Wine Store building and the backs of the shop units. Members will note that, that most of the openings are blocked up. They don't have access into the Majestic Wine Store site. They're serviced from the front. The building behind is Luminosity Court. This is an older photograph, Chair, because the building is currently being refurbished. Another photograph of the Majestic Wine Store. This is more up to date, showing the Luminosity Court. And this is a view from Hastings Road with the other half of the site allocation, which I'll come to, Halford's store. This is Hastings Road, which terminates with a barrier about halfway along its length there. further view towards the site from the north from Argyle Road, and then a view from the south looking north up Drayton Green Road. That's Dominion House that you can see in the background. As I say, the site is allocated in the current DPD, site EAL 11, comprises both the Majestic Wine Store, all of the retail units, and the Halford store. But the planning application site before you tonight is a substantial part of that allocation. And likewise, the site allocation is repeated in the Regulation 19 local plan. Site allocation, exactly the same site area and broadly the same development proposals, although it now is indicated as being suitable for a tall building, which I'll come on to shortly. So the scheme has been in development since the application was submitted, as members will note from the report. When it was first submitted, it comprised 448 student rooms in a tower unit here. Disregard this, Chair. This is an indicative layout for the Halford store, but this was giving us site context. And a building of ground +6 to ground up to 20 stories at that time. There followed a period of consultation and amendment with the applicants. First of all, they reduced it to 429 units and took a floor off the tallest part of the unit and started to explore options for reorganising the shoulders of the block. Proposal now you have before you is for 412 student rooms. So that's a significant reduction from the original submission. It still involves a commercial element onto Hastings Road and community space, which I'll come on to in a minute. And the taller part of the scheme is now no greater than 16 stories. And I'll raise the details of the matter of story heights as well as we progress. I'm pondering on this drawing now, Chair, because I think it's important in a contextual sense to understand the relationship between the development, the heights within the Reg 19 local plan, and the heights of the buildings that the developer provides. This developer builds in a modular form off-site and delivers the modules to the site, and as a consequence of which their story heights are lower than conventional building story heights. So as you can see here, the Reg 19 allocation height of 45.5 metres, which is indicated as a line there, in fact correlates to about 2 extra stories on the main part of the block, with the one part of the shoulder being below that height, likewise, and on this west elevation facing Drayton Green Road, likewise below that height. And the same on, to the rear, Chair, with regard to story heights. And I would invite the committee to look at the proposals in terms of the actual physical height of the block, rather than a discussion about story heights in and of themselves, because I think that's unhelpful and misleading. I think this drawing, which is in the report bundle, graphically explains what the physical difference would be in the height of the building that you have before you. Some information about the ground floor site slopes. Members will have noticed from the site visit on the north side on Drayton Green Road is about 4 metres higher than on the south side, and the developer has incorporated within the lower floor most of the operational uses, the cycle parking, bin store, etc. The commercial unit, which would front Hastings Road, and then the vehicular access to the site from Hastings Road. And in this you will see that that says 3 units, but in fact in reality there are 2 now of the commercial units that are retained are outside of the site and physically detached from the proposed building. And then this drawing, Chair, gives what would be the upper ground floor arrangements with the pedestrian access to the student accommodation and the ground floor areas of new public realm that the scheme would provide, principally in this corner here and onto the Hastings Road frontage. And then this is some information about the types and numbers of student rooms within the scheme. These are typical floors, Chair. There are some 20 different room types through the scheme with varying floor areas, some larger for assisted living, for example, and others because of the way that the building is arranged and designed and orientated, as you can see. So they are not confined to one single unit type. And then some information about materiality. In order to try and break up the scheme and to provide some interest and variety in the design, the bricks are basically from these 3 colourways. the central unit within this darker brick colour, the shoulders in this lighter brick colour, and then the commercial unit fronting Hastings Road in this buff colour, picking up the themes from adjacent properties in the surrounding area. And then this is some detailing, which isn't clear on the images, of the detailing work that the applicant has done to the building in order to increase its interest and provide a high quality design. And then the layout of open and amenity space levels for the student residents on two areas of floors here. These are green roofs with PVs. These are the public realm areas. This area in purple here, Chair, is the area that the applicant would offer to community groups as part of a Section 106 obligation outside of term times. There will be a public access allowed to utilise rooms in this area for various community activities, obviously on arrangement, first of all, with the occupiers, and then some information regarding the landscaping and biodiversity. Headline points, Chair, that the scheme achieves an urban greening factor of 0.4, which is policy compliant, as well as a biodiversity net gain of 10.5%, which is just over the new minimum requirement. And then some images, Chair, of the proposal, which is here. These blue outlines are for guidance only. They relate to the so-called West 55 building. Just provide a bit of context, but the scheme isn't dependent upon that scheme for its judgment. So this is the proposal from Argyle Road, Chair. And then, in fact, the next image along here is further along, almost at the point of the railway bridge where the new building would be situated. This is a view from Alexandria Road, the Waitrose store on your left there. This is a view from Hastings Road beyond the barrier crossing, with the new building in view there. And you can see how the materials work and relate to the scaling of it. This is an artist's image, Chair. That's why the building looks somewhat unusual in its shape, just to give a sense of the feel of the building in the locality. A view at lower levels from Hastings Road, again showing the difference in materiality. Likewise from Drayton Green Road, and then lastly, in relation to these views, a view from Jacob's Ladder Railway Bridge, the new building here, and how it correlates to what would be West 55, although you can still see the Dominion House block behind it. And then the last slide, Chair, some images of the new public realm the scheme will provide, which is a policy requirement. So there's the new entrance area around the student entrance at this point here. Views along Drayton Green Road showing how the existing units are incorporated within the scheme, and then the new amenity frontage of the site to Hastings Road, Chair. And that's all. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Greg. Right, okay, we have two speakers on this. We have an objector and on behalf of the applicant, an agent. So we'll take the objector first, which is Caroline Evans. Are you here, Caroline? And have you been shown how to use the microphone? That's okay. Have you been shown how to use the microphone? Oh, okay. You have 3 minutes and I will let you know with 30 seconds to go. When you're ready.
Okay. Gentlemen and ladies, this proposal makes a complete mockery of Ealing's new local development plan, which the council and thousands of local people spent several years working on. The plan says developments on this site should not be more than 13 stories or 45.5 metres. This proposal is nearly 55 metres and it breaches that. If the council caves into the first developer to challenge their plan, it would mean Ealing's local plan can be ignored by all developers. This development is a waste of precious land resources. It's a prime parcel of land near an Elizabeth Line station. Priority should be given to residential homes, not student bedsits. 12,000 people are on Ealing's housing list, but this plan isn't helping any of them. The proposal contravenes the GLA's London plan, which states tall buildings should only be developed in locations that are identified as suitable in development plans, which this site is not. It also does not contribute to the mixed and inclusive neighbourhood required by the London Plan. It also contravenes council guidelines, which state that the height, scale and massing must reflect the character of surrounding residential areas. New development on Hastings Road must be low-rise and not overlook the neighbouring two-storey properties to respect the current building line. Preference must be given to a comprehensive development of the whole site, which includes the Halford site next door, and ensure heights are developed in accordance with the tall building strategy of between 6 and 13 stories. Tide construction talking about reduced height for the building's stories. Ground floor plus 16 stories, that's 17 stories to you and me, but they are ignoring a mezzanine floor and extra height for the rooftop garden. It's more like 19 stories. At nearly 55 metres high, it's 5 times the height of the 2- and 3-storey houses surrounding it. Privacy for existing residents will be lost, homes will be overlooked and daylight blocked. About 1,500 people are so concerned they've sent in objections to the council website and to the planning officer. The rooms themselves may have lowered ceilings, many are small, some are just 15.5 square metres, only slightly bigger than a prison cell. And the communal spaces are also small. This plan is cramming in
30 seconds.
412 students who could only live there some of the year. This is a wasted opportunity and could be used for people who would live there all year round. Consent to this development won't just impact this site, but will set a strong precedent for other developments across the borough and signal to developers that Ealing's plan isn't worth the paper it's written on. Unbelievably, I've just seen a planning application for another huge student rooms block right round the corner on the Oxford Road. Just how much student accommodation does Ealing
Thank
need?
you. Thank you. Very well timed. Thank you very much. So the agent on behalf of the applicant is Matthew Mainwaring. Have you been shown how to use the microphone? Because people do struggle. Members of the committee struggle. That's why I'm asking. Sorry. So, okay, again. Now I'm speaking for the committee. Thank you. Again, you have 3 minutes. We will tell you when there's 30 seconds to go and we'll cut you off at 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Matthew Mainwaring and I'm the agent for the planning application, acting on behalf of Tide Construction. The scheme before you this evening is the culmination of nearly 2 years of work from the initial pre-application conversations with the council. The proposals have been discussed with a wide range of council departments led by the planning department. The applicant has engaged with over 3,000 households and businesses in the local area, holding consultation events and meeting with local amenity groups. The scheme has been discussed at length with the GLA and presented to the council's design review and community engagement panels. Tide has amended the scheme on several occasions, reducing its size and trying to respond to the comments received. At the same time, Tide has made sure that the scheme adheres to planning policy to make the optimum use of brownfield sites and meet the challenge of continuing to deliver on affordable housing, carbon reduction, and biodiversity net gain objectives. 42 Hastings Road is a challenging site, but it is also extremely well located within the metropolitan town centre with all its attendant social and economic infrastructure. It is within easy walking distance of the West London University's Ealing Green campus and has excellent access to public transport. There are a number of heritage assets, including listed buildings and conservation areas within 1 kilometre of the site. However, the site's position within the surrounding townscape and the way in which the scheme has been designed means that there is very little harm to these heritage assets. This is an important benefit of this scheme on this site. It is not something which applies to all high density developments in the borough, and is an opportunity that should not be overlooked. Despite the reductions made to the scheme continues to deliver significant and important public policy benefits, including 35% affordable housing, improvements to the public realm, creation of new active frontage to improve the vitality of the area, car-free development, carbon reductions of circa 35% over the 2021 building regulations, 10.5% biodiversity net gain, and typically a 50% reduction in the construction time and local disruption using off-site modular construction
30
techniques.
seconds.
£1 million of Section 106 payments, and the creation of an additional 4.7 million annual spend for local economy from the occupants of the development. In this difficult economic climate, Tide is fully funded and is ready to mobilise quickly and deliver this high-quality development. We trust, therefore, that you'll be able to support this application, which has been subject to very significant scrutiny by your officers, on which they recommend for approval. Thank you.
Thank you again. Bang on 3 minutes. Thank you very much. Right, okay. Greg, do you want to come back on anything that's been said at the moment?
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay, right. I'm going to open it up for questions from the committee. I'll try to bunch your questions together as much as possible, so we don't have to keep continually going around. I'm going to go this way, if that's okay. Councillor Meady, first, keep your hands up, please. Carry on, Councillor Meady.
Oh.
Anyone else?
Just wanted to ask if there's been any substantive difference in the comments received between the first application and the current application we're looking at, because it does seem like a lot of the objections are referring to the first application. So I just want to see if there's a big difference between the comments, if you've noticed.
I'll take that, Chair. They're summarised in the...
Sorry, hold on. I'll bunch them together. Hold on.
Sorry, Chair. Sorry, Chair, of course.
Okay, that's okay. So next is Councillor Mahmood.
Thank you, Chair.
Freeze. Sorry, Greg.
Thank you, Chair. Just for my knowledge, I just wanted to know 400 student accommodations. Do we have the applicant, and how you are showing that demand? Are we under contract of any university, or what's the situation? Are we fulfilling the university demand? So where we are at in terms of introducing and considering 400 student accommodation.
Right, Councillor Summers next.
Yeah, I've actually got two questions. So I don't know if it's so. Yeah, firstly, at the site visit, we saw these the quite ugly sort of shops that are on the bridge, and the two at the end haven't agreed to sell at the moment. But we were told that negotiations are going on, and it might possibly end up being in the development. I just wanted to clarify whether that would affect the viability at all. If you've got to buy 2 extra buildings, would that change the current viability, or is that being built into the current plan, and they're not going to come back and say, oh, we need to add another floor on? And secondly, on the question of the modular construction, I'm just checking that, does that affect the lifespan of this building? A modular construction, will it be lasting as long as, is it sort of as well built as a traditional building?
Okay. Right, have you got those, Greg?
I have, thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
So first of all, with regard to Councillor Beattie's questions, approximately 50-50 the representations on the first stage of the application consultation, when the application was submitted and pursuant to the latest amendments, Chair. A number of the residents who responded to the first stage have naturally responded to the second stage. But in summary, the comments that were different to the earliest stage are all summarised in the briefing note, with officer comments as appropriate there. So I should say that the questions to a large degree are more fine grain than they were at the first stage, which were generally more directed to the principle of development. That said, equally as many residents have in the second phase objected to the principle of development for the same reasons. With regard to Councillor Mahmood's question, the applicant is not a university or an educational establishment. The applicants have advised us that they are in discussions with educational establishments, but we haven't explored that yet. And there's no absolute need to, because as the purpose-built student accommodation policy in the London Plan applies, if a developer does not have an agreement with a university, then they would be required to enter into what's called a nominations agreement as part of the Section 106 agreement, which precludes occupation of the building until there is an agreement with a university. So that is a commercial risk that the developer takes themselves. And then with regard to Councillor Summers' two questions, I'm not aware, Councillor, what the position is with regards to the other occupants. They have raised objections to the application. These are the occupants of the shop units on Drayton Bridge Road. But there's been no discussion between us and the applicants about what might happen to the scheme if they were to take those units in, or whether they would want to review it. And of course, if that were to be the case, then it would have to be the subject of a planning application if it involved any changes, and that would come back to committee. And with regard to the modular construction, Chair, as I understand the position, the developer's construction has the same lifespan as any other modern building, at least 40 years.
Okay, right. I think everyone's satisfactory. Councillor Young, then Councillor Driscoll, then Councillor Shaw.
Can I just ask a question about the water supply? On page 98, Thames Water talks about the problems of supplying water to the site. It has a similar comment on the following planning application. I note on our briefing notes tonight, there is an additional condition on the following application to do with water supply, but there is not on this application. Can somebody explain to me the difference between the two applications?
Okay, I'll hold on that. I'll do the three together, unless you've got anything else, Councillor Young. You can have another one, yes.
Can somebody say how much amenity space is being provided on site and what the provisions are for overcoming any deficit in amenity? What is the deficit in amenity space?
Councillor Driscoll.
Yeah, it's to ask for some clarity on probably the principles that will apply to this application, and probably in principle will apply to the second application this evening, in terms of where we are with the relevance of Ealing's older local plan, and because this site wasn't designated for a taller building in the older local plan, and now in the emerging new local plan it is designated, but the new local plan hasn't concluded its process and hasn't been fully approved. So we're in this sort of twilight. So we've got an emerging new local plan, but the relevance and regard we have to that, and also clarification on with whether we call it a number of stories in a building height or by the actual meters. How are those? Are they absolute benchmarks? Are they absolute criteria? Or are they a guide that is to have regard for, but they're not absolutes? Because a lot of the objections are clearly around the height and the dominance of the building. So where does it sit within these different plans at different timescales? Thank you.
I'll take those, Greg, for now, because I've got three other indications. So you okay?
Thank you, Chair. So with regard to Councillor Young's first question concerning the water supply, Chair, normally the Thames Water will, in certain circumstances, ask that we impose a condition, normally to do with the site not being occupied until an adequate supply is agreed with the utility. They haven't asked for that in this particular case. That may be an oversight on their part. But I do know of occasions, and certainly have had them myself in Southall, Chair, for example, where Thames Water have asked us to impose that condition. So we haven't been asked to do so. We would have done had they requested it. With regard to
Greg, sorry, Councillor Young's looking perplexed, so I'm just going to call him back in. Did you hear that? Sorry.
Where Thames Water talks about requiring an undertaking from them. In our report.
Sorry, did you hear that, Greg? Page 98, Councillor Young is referring to. which is almost the last page, second last
Oh,
page.
sorry, yes, request conditions. Yes, sorry, that's an omission on my part, Chair. If Councillor Young wishes, a condition could be inserted to that effect. My apologies.
So we'll have to insert that condition should the committee wish to insert that commission. Or I don't think there'll be any objection to that. I don't see any, so we will. My microphone went off there. So did you hear that? Sorry. We should put that condition in.
If we were minded to pass the planning application,
If we are minded to pass.
which we're not necessarily yet.
No, I forgive me. We'll get to that point when we go to the vote, of course.
And with regard to Councillor,
Sorry.
Councillor. Sorry, Councillor. Is that
Alex,
okay? I'll answer your second question. On the first page of the briefing note, Chair, are the answers to both of Councillor Young's questions, in as much as the first addendum, which refers to section 7.5 landscaping, gives a breakdown of the areas of amenity space for the students within the scheme. This is open amenity space as well as the internal amenity space, which I hope answers your question, Councillor Young, on that point. And then I'll answer the second question.
Thank you. So move on.
If you look, sorry, no, I was just going to direct Councillor Young to the financial obligation, and that is item 7, private and communal amenity space, a £65,000 financial contribution to the council to the delivery of off-site improvements.
Okay.
I think
Councillor Driscoll. Yeah, please.
Yes. I've addressed the first part of your question, Councillor Driscoll, in the report, but in essence, the position is that the current development plan for decision-making purposes is the development plan DPD, because that was formally adopted by the council. So site allocation EA11 is the operative site allocation, which does not include provision for a tall building on the site, and that, so therefore an analysis under the tall buildings provisions of London Plan Policy D9 would be required in any event, which is exactly what we do in the report. We assess the scheme in those terms. However, the Regulation 19 local plan is a material consideration. It's not decisive because it's not the development plan, but it's a clear indication of the council's intention to see a tall building typology being developed on the site, and that came through the tall building strategy and other documents which have informed the preparation of the emerging plan. So any assessment of the development proposals will be looked at contextually, which is current development plan doesn't provide for a tall building. A forthcoming development plan is a clear indication of the council's intention to have a tall building on the site in some form. Councillor, you asked about the question of whether the measurements of 13 stories or 45.5 metres are written in tablets of stone. That they are not. Any development, even if a tall building was within those design parameters, would still be subject to testing under policy D9. We acknowledge the fact that the development is in excess of the potential heights, which is the exact wording that's used in the Regulation 19 policy, and those are tested through the report against the provisions of policy D9 on the basis that if it can be shown that even at a height and meterage above the indication in the allocation, the officers consider the scheme to be satisfactory, then we have recommended, or I've recommended accordingly. So as a matter of interest, the GLA has raised concerns as part of its consultation on the Regulation 19 to the council's use of the words maximum or thresholds for measuring the heights of tall buildings. It has in fact indicated to the borough that that's a misreading of London Plan Policy D9. That absolute limit should only be imposed in specific circumstances, such as, for example, in relation to protected views or Heathrow flight paths or the such like. and that the GLA would urge upon the council to use words like potential or appropriate in order to allow for greater flexibility going forward. I'm not going to presume what the plan might say, Chair, but I think the thinking therefore is that it should not be seen as an absolute limit in making a planning judgment. And certainly the strategic authority, which is the authority that gives us policy D9, is saying at the moment we haven't read it correctly. Bit long-winded, I apologise, Chair. I hope that's
No, I think I think we got the answer at the end. Councillor Shaw.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'd just like to clarify about the consultation period, because the papers for this meeting were published last Wednesday. And I know that on the council's website, the consultation period actually finished last Wednesday as well. So now I know there were historically a lot of objections already to this application. I was just wondering, you know, if proper time has been allowed to make sure that the objections that were submitted certainly before last Wednesday and the 17th of April have been considered and written into this report. That's my first question, Chair. And the second question is just one on light. I noted that a lot of the objections are around sort of rights to light and overshadowing and so on. And on page 65, it does say that it was reviewed by an external contractor and that impacts are generally within acceptable limits. I was just wondering if you could sort of give a bit more detail on that, you know, how generally are they within acceptable limits? Because it sort of suggests that there's an awful lot there that might not be within the acceptable limits.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. No, hold on. Two questions there. Councillor Gordon next.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to get some clarity on the affordability element. So in the agent's presentation, you referred to the 35% affordable. Now we know what 35% means when we're doing planning applications for housing for homes. Obviously, these are for student properties. How does this, what does that actually mean? What is 35%? What is affordable? And how can we have reassurance that there will be genuine opportunity for students who can't afford market rent? Thank you.
Okay, did you indicate Councillor Kelly? Oh, right, okay. I saw a flurry of hands and sorry, I didn't, my peripheral vision was interrupted. Right, okay, so those questions, please, Greg.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Shaw's questions with regard to the consultation period, first of all. The consultation period on the submission of the amended drawings, Councillor, actually finished yesterday. And I have been burning the midnight oil as the representations have come in, literally burning the midnight oil, and have been reading through the 500 representations and summarising them, and up to lunchtime today, because they were still coming in at lunchtime today, because we will accept representations up until that period, and they are summarised in the briefing note for you. What I've done there is that you have the representations in the main report as they came in originally, and the ones that have come in since then that raise new matters are addressed in the briefing note. I hope that's clear on the first question. The second question with regard to rights to light and the comment that they are generally within acceptable standards or acceptable limits. I think it's important, Chair, to bear in mind that BRE guidance is precisely that. It's expressly seen as an instrument of guidance rather than policy, and is not intended to suggest that simply because something does not meet its standards, it is de facto unacceptable. There are certain properties with certain windows that may be affected more than others. That's inevitable in development situations like this. Those in luminosity court are probably the ones most materially affected, and that tends to be because most of the flats on the east elevation are face only in one direction. They're one window flats, and they would suffer a greater diminution in natural lighting and sky limit lighting than might be expected in other circumstances. But it's worth noting, Chair, that in terms of separation distances, which we normally employ as part of the assessment of whether there are adverse lighting impacts, the separation between the new block and luminosity court is in fact well within our, in fact, it exceeds our minimum limits. So there are impacts on natural lighting to the flats, but they are considered not to be of themselves significant or so harmful as to constitute reasons for refusal of the application. And then with regard to Councillor Gordon's question on affordability, the London Plan Policy H15 sets out criteria for the testing of affordability based on guidance provided by the Mayor in a manner similar to what is done with the conventional affordable housing. And within the Section 106 agreement, there will be a requirement to peg rental rates back within those limitations so that they are strictly affordable against normal student housing rates in a manner very, very similar to the way it's done with market and affordable housing in the normal way.
Okay, thanks, Greg. Councillor Young, these new questions or facilitated from the answers that Greg's given, or?
No, new question.
Okay, I'll allow this because it.
Can I just clarify the situation regarding disabled parking and the standards that we're supposed to meet? I see from the report that we're providing 2 spaces, but in the report it talks that the GLA standard would be 14 spaces, and I understand that there are 44 disabled adapted rooms.
Yes, Chair.
So how do you work out the number of spaces that you're supposed to provide?
The GLA or TfL more particularly gave advice on that particular matter, and having regards to the highly sustainable location of the site and the fact this is intended principally for student housing, the TfL's view is that although below their normal requirement, the 2 spaces proposed was satisfactory in this case.
Okay. Right, I see no more indications for questions, so we'll go into the debate. Right, all those indicating I'll go this way this time. So, right, I'm looking for anyone that wants to speak on this. I've never seen so many politicians not wanting to speak, right? And Councillor Kelly, do you want to speak first? Sorry.
Yeah, I was hoping to perhaps speak a bit later, but there we are. That was my chance. Yeah, I sort of like to expand on a few points that was raised in what I submit. Councillor Summers was talking about modular construction. In my view, it's been quite a success in terms of it gets things built very quickly. But obviously, time will tell whether has a good lifespan because it's a relatively new industry. The lady who spoke in objection raised some interesting points about affordable housing. And I wish it'd be nice if we had an application here that fulfilled and addressed those issues. But we have an application for student housing. The people who have bought this land and their enterprise is student housing. Again, only time will tell how much student housing is needed. But I, for one, welcome students and the opportunity for them to live in good accommodation. My overall view on the recent student housing that sort of popped up, when I say popped up, that has been created recently around train stations in the main, is they're very well curated. Let's be frank, students who don't generally curate their own housing themselves, they need someone to do it for them, so they're in a managed accommodation. So I find the streetscape around these properties to be quite pleasing. There is this sort of perception that this has sort of got over the fence or over the hurdle or under the wire. I'm not quite know which way to put it. Policy plans, but again, it's an application that's put in front of us to grant, defer or refuse. I like the design. I like the vision for the area. I liked the fact that West Ealing Station, Elizabeth Line, you know, was once the future, but now it's very present. And we as a borough, as a planning authority, have to sort of keep up with what's going on all over London and particularly close to train stations. So it's larger than we're used to. In North Acton Station, where people were living close in 1- and 2-story buildings, it was what they've got there now was larger than what they used to, but all of those buildings are sort of integrated into the landscape. And Dominion Court, West 55, Luminosity Court, they're all examples of successful buildings. So I'm minded to grant this application. Thank you.
Right, councillor Gordon, next.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to really address my main worry about this application, and I think the objector said it in her opening comments, and its height, which we know is very challenging. This is a challenging area with many large-scale applications which have gone through, which are coming with the Waitrose development across the road. And I think Greg made the key point about the new local plan that's coming in. It is a material consideration. So whilst we don't have to enforce the 13 stories, because it's not in policy yet, but it's likely to come or something close, this building will exceed that considerably. I have no problem with students being in this accommodation. I would much rather the developer looked at the chronic housing crisis we have in the borough and the shortage of good quality homes for residents on the waiting list. But they chose to go for students, their model, their choice. So so basically the height remains a problem for me. I haven't decided how I'm going to vote yet when it comes to the vote. I'll listen to other contributions, but it remains a fairly critical problem for me. Thank you.
Councillor Shaw.
Thanks, Chair. Similarly to Councillor Gordon, the main concerns are over height and the local plan specifications that are coming in. I appreciate that within the report there is discussion over storey height and whether 15 stories traditionally and 12-story height comes in, but it does also concern me that actually what that is much smaller living space for people who are there. In this case, that's students, and I know that we do often and have discussed before at the committee about sort of building rabbit hutches in the sky. I am very concerned that this development could well be that. I do also recognise that it is by West Ealing Station and the Elizabeth Line, and that actually these is as part of the London plan. These areas are sort of advisory, if you like, for greater heights of buildings, and that there have been other applications certainly in the area and directly opposite that the council has opposed and have then been overturned by inspectors. So I think we need to consider all of that very carefully. Like Councillor Gordon, to be honest, immediately right now, this is 50-50. I honestly couldn't say. I'll wait and hear colleagues' contributions and make my mind up with the notes that I'm taking here.
Councillor Driscoll.
Just to follow on from that about the idea of being an issue with student accommodation. Yes, we'd all prefer more family homes, but students in the private rented market do add an extra burden and pressure and demand. So having student accommodation can actually reduce the burden on the private rented sector. So the fact it's a student target accommodation, I don't have an issue with that, and that could be actually a positive. Its location next to West Ealing Station, mass transit, we've got the London plan to consider and how that focuses towards greater density towards mass transit. The issue is height, which is often the nub, I think, of a lot of complaints. I think it was helpful to have the officers outline of where the local plan might be going, and the use of thinking of a limit as an absolute might be questioned in how that's progressing. So I think that's really important for all parties to consider. I am concerned about the height, though. I kind of reserve my position to see what other colleagues say, but I'm mindful how that is being viewed with the local plan development as a recommendation rather than absolute now. So there we go. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Driscoll. Councillor Young. Sorry, you did indicate, didn't you, Councillor?
Yes. Sorry, I've got serious concerns over this. One of the main ones is the piecemeal development of the site. We're not including the Mullion's garage next door. We're not including the 3 shops on Drayton Bridge Road. And the GLA consideration was that this was not satisfactory. I understand there has been a submission by the applicant providing 2 different options, but the GLA's response to that was that they had significant concerns with both options. In our own plan, we say that this should be developed overall, site EAL 11. The whole site should be developed completely, rather than being a piecemeal development. And if we agree this, we're going against our own plan. I'm also concerned about the disabled parking. I understand that you can squeeze the disabled parking down, but the GLA recommendation is that you take account of those who are disabled, who are not able to use public transport. And I think it's 44 rooms. You're going to have more than 2 students who are likely to be able to not use London transport. However high the PTAL is, if you can't go up and down the steps or can't get on and off the train, it doesn't do you any good. The height's another issue. You're driving a coach and horses through our own plan. The height is specifically mentioned in our plan. We don't want anything higher than, I think it's so many meters, 48 meters. We're going 10 meters above that. That's far too much. And I think this plan should be rejected.
Thank you, Councillor Young. Councillor Padder and Councillor Summers and Councillor Hamidi have indicated I did say I'll come next week, sorry. Councillor Padder.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it would have been better if this was a family residential accommodation, but we students do need somewhere to live where they can afford to live. It's in private residence. It's very expensive for students, so it's not easy for them to afford it. And I think this developer is also listening as well. He has reduced the from 448 rooms to 412. So I think this is quite a good development. And the students will bring some business to a local economy as well as residents there. So I'm minded to support this application.
Thank you, Councillor Padder. Councillor Summers.
Yeah. Firstly, I just wanted to point out that that it's not in its current state a great use of the land. It's got mainly it's a wine warehouse with a huge great car park. Which is, well, when we were visited on Saturday, was mostly not in use. So, whatever is there, will probably be an improvement. But on Saturday after the site visit, I happened to be walking up to the bus stop and met a gentleman who's just emailed me, or he emailed me earlier, Mr. Baker, who lives locally, and he was talking about it, and he emails says. We discussed that this is a prime site for a development for key workers. It would be a criminal waste for it to be used for seasonal student accommodation. But the whole point is that we don't have that power. We are reactive. The planning system is built reactively. You have to deal with what is in front of you. Ideally, we would say, as Ealing Council would say, we want this to be affordable housing for local residents, but we don't own the site. We cannot control that. So we can only judge what is in front of us. Personally, I think the site, the application is a good one. Okay, it might be quite tall, slightly taller than is specified in the emerging local plan. But I think it will give benefits to the area. Not only the students coming in will, generate money for the local economy, and if they don't already live in the borough, but it also at ground level, I think there was quite a lot of commercial space, and there's potential for restaurants and bars and other facilities which will not just be benefit students but other local residents. So yeah, on balance, I am thinking of supporting it.
Councillor Hamidi.
Thank you, Chair. I do want to echo what colleagues have said. I want to point out that Reg 19 is a draft and a guideline. Original application was for 21 stories, but officers have worked with the developer and this has reduced down to 16 stories. And as pointed by the officer, because of the type of units that they are building, it will be lower than your typical 16 stories that you do see. I welcome that the developer has mentioned that the amenity is going to be available for the community to use outside of term time. So that's needed, I believe. The speaker that spoke against the application mentioned that we don't need student accommodation. We send students from Ealing Borough outside to other areas. So we need student accommodations too here. So I think that point I don't really agree with. The location, because it's near a train station, the height of the building, it's not an issue for me, and it would be a viable option for students given that it's the Elizabeth line. So I am minded to support the application.
Okay, I don't see any further indications. So really, before we go to the vote, I just, I suppose really, and what I'm picking up is, if anything's an issue, is the height. And I think that, and where we are with our emerging plan, etc. And at the moment, we have the feedback from the officers that it is an indication rather than an absolute. So I think that the height for me is not an issue. And yes, and colleagues have mentioned it's Crossrail, it's next to Crossrail site. We've spent years trying to get Crossrail here. Once we've got Crossrail here, the development will follow, sort of thing. So personally, I'm not going to indicate where I'm going, so I think I have almost, but I'm going to go straight to the vote now. So all those in favour, please indicate. You got? No, it's not. It's 9. That's what I thought. Right. Yes. Put your hands down. All those against? And any abstentions? 1. Right, so the application has been passed. Thank you. Okay. Right, we will move on to the second application for tonight, which is not Greg's. It is, sorry, Olivier, sorry. I'm just trying to get the page before I announce who's. So we are going, settle down, everyone, settle down. We are going on to 99-113 Broadway, West Ealing. Yes. If you can open up, Olivia, that'd be great.
Good evening, everyone. The scheme before you today is 99 to 113 Broadway, West Ealing, and it is for the demolition of the existing buildings and the erection of a mixed-use development comprising flexible commercial floor space at the ground floor and mezzanine levels and 144 new homes on the upper floors. Associated landscaping and public realm improvements along St. James's Avenue. Here you can see the application site. Towards the middle is St. James's Avenue, which is currently public realm and is adopted highway. To the rear of the site is Canberra Road, which is a servicing area predominantly. Here on my mouse, you can see Sainsbury's and the multi-storey car park. To the south of the site, you can also see St. James's Church. North of the site is the Broadway, the High Street, which has a variety of buses which go along this route. The top left image shows the existing site as it stands today. Here you can see the public realm. Currently here you can see existing trees, street lighting, and it also has cycle parking with areas for scooters. To the rear of the site, standing here, you can see from St. James's Church, and it shows the rear of the site as well as the existing car parking here and refuse and storage. So the existing buildings on site are approximately 11.5 meters high. And here you can see through the middle is the public realm. As discussed in the previous application, this is also allocated in the existing DPD. The existing DPD allocation is for a wider allocation. So that was for 59 to 119. With regard to Reg 19, that has reduced somewhat, and that is now 99 to 113 the Broadway, which is the application site. As discussed about the proposal, and as you can see from the report, the heights proposed are 14 and 16 stories, detailing of 50.55 meters and 54.68. And there's a 9-story link which would sit above St. James's Avenue. Each building would have one core with 2 staircases. There would be 911 square meters of flexible commercial floor space falling under use class E, 144 residential homes, which would be 1 to 3 bedroom homes. This would be 48 1-bed homes, 73 2-bed homes, and 23 3-bed homes. The proposal would also provide communal amenity and children's play space, public realm improvements along St. James's Avenue thoroughfare, 261 long stay cycle spaces, 4 disabled parking spaces. As mentioned before, the site is adopted highways. The scheme would see a link building which would sit over the existing public realm. The adopted highway would continue to be maintained by the local authority. The council has the freehold of the land. This area would remain for public use. The surfacing would be maintained by the local authority, and were the application to be agreed to be granted, the landscaping and seating would be maintained by the developer in perpetuity. If you can see my mouse here, this is the proposed landscaping, and the arrows detail where it fits on the adopted highway. And something that came up at the committee site visit was with regard to the street lighting. So here you can see the numbered street lights which are maintained by the local authority. So the consultation, there were 36 responses. All of them were objecting to the proposal. Similarly, they were discussing about height and massing, tall building, proposed tenure, design, conflicts with the local plan, and issues with antisocial behaviour, as well as the proposed amenity space proposed. These have been addressed within the report. And as discussed in the previous application about tall buildings, and also with regard to the Reg 19 site allocation, the report details why it's considered that there can be an increase on this site, and happy to discuss further if needed. Here you can see some modelling of the application site here in orange, and in yellow are consented schemes, and detailing the differing heights. And then here you can also see a further visual representation. So again, the application site is in orange. This is just a proposed breakdown of the housing mix, and in particular with regard to habitable rooms and the tenure split. So this shows that there would be, for social rent, 32.37%, and for shared ownership, 67.63%. The scheme meets the 35% fast track threshold, as you can see from this table here, and then market sales are 64.99%. Let's discuss. This is the front elevation showing, looking from the Broadway at the application site. So this details the maximum height, with the building to the left being the taller element. And to bear in mind, as part of the allocation, to the end of this terrace, a building of approximately 16 stories in height is potentially to be allowed as part of the allocation. This is the ground floor layout, and this details the commercial floor space at ground floor level, as well as the openings which open onto the public realm and increase natural surveillance. Entrances to the residential elements are also from this location. So one door here and one door here. As we go further up, so this is a typical floor layout of the second floor. So it details the Broadway, and then to the rear of the site, and the openings that will be there, which will be discussed later, and then how the proposed homes fit around the cores. So with regard to neighbouring amenity, the scheme has been assessed against its impact on neighbouring properties around the site. With regard to daylight, 88 rooms, so that's 78%, are considered to meet the BRE guidance. And for sunlight, for all existing rooms and habitable amenity areas analysed, they would meet that criteria also. There are some properties which were in Chignall Place, a scheme which has previously gone before you councillors, and due to the nature of that site being a C-shaped, some of those wouldn't meet that target anyway, just due to how the site has been designed. Here you can see images of the public realm. Particular concern during the I guess pre-application and application process was about the landscaping that was to be proposed, and to ensure that there would be adequate light received and that they would continue to grow. So here you can see the canopy and the openness and light that can be received, and that was considered important in terms of the design. Here, this top one here is a visual representation again of the application site. And then these photographs are a bit further down the road, the Sainsbury's. And here you can see a similar development, which is set further back. And you can see how there isn't so much light in these areas here. You can also see, with regard to the landscaping, the lack of it here. So which was why it was considered necessary that the developer continues to maintain the landscaping for this scheme. With regard to energy and landscaping, there's been a 70% carbon reduction. The scheme promotes a circular economy. It has an urban greening factor score of 0.5, which exceeds the London plan, which seeks a 0.4. It's exemplar with regard to biodiversity net gain, with its proposal having a 645% increase as compared to the 10% required. And bear in mind that this scheme was submitted before that legislation came in. There would be public realm improvements with tree planting and private shared residential amenity space. These would be at first the floor 9 and floor 13. And here you can see a visual representation. This is the one on floor 9, and this is floor 13. With regard to transport, this is a car-free development. There would be 4 disabled parking spaces on site. The scheme would need to provide 10%, and that would be 14. So the remaining disabled parking spaces would be secured by way of a Section 106. 261 long stay cycle parking spaces. The scheme would promote a green travel plan and the promotion of a car club. It's 15 minutes walk from Hanwell and West Ealing Station, both of them on Crossrail. Servicing would be to the rear of the site on Canberra Road. So the conclusions, the scheme delivers 46 affordable homes, equivalent to 139 affordable habitable rooms. The proposer would have 35% affordable, which is 12 social rent homes, and 34 shared ownership homes. The scheme proposes good quality residential accommodation, which is coupled with its good quality design. The scheme would deliver improved public realm. The social economic benefits would be on-site and off-site jobs for apprentices, new public realm, and improved flexible commercial space. The scheme would provide over 1 million in Section 106 payments that can be reinvested into the local area and the community. And then here you can just see a breakdown of the financial contributions for the Section 106, and the scheme has been recommended for grant subject to a stage 2 referral to the GLA.
Thank you. Right, okay. We have, oh, let me give up a piece of paper. We have 2 speakers, an objector and a person on behalf of the developer. So we have the objector first, Kevin Rafferty. You here? You've been briefed on how to use the microphone. Yes, you've got 3 minutes, and with 30 seconds to go, I will let you know.
I was going to start out by questioning the developer's description of this as a 14-story building, because the documents I've read on the website describe it as a 14-story building. It's new to me to hear tonight you saying that it's a 16-story building. So maybe that point has already been made. But then I fear that maybe the developer's saying 16 and actually it's 18, because if you look at the developer's own drawing, they mark 2nd story at exactly the same height as the 4th story of the adjoining building. I think you want to be very careful about what the developer is telling you about the height of this building. So let's assume it is a 16-story building. The local plan says that a maximum of 12 stories would fit on this site. Therefore, a reasonable person would say that 4 stories must be taken off of this before you can consider it. But I've just learned tonight that maximum doesn't mean maximum. This is explosive. I don't think you want the world to hear this. You don't want the world to hear that when Ealing Council says maximum, it doesn't mean maximum. It means the planning officer can decide on the day, maybe a few more stories will be fine. He's not going to hear that from the hundreds of objecting residents. He might hear it from the developer he's very close to. But this is explosive. I don't think you want the world to hear this. We have a specific complaint about the span of the building that covers over St. James Avenue. We saw the photos of Melbourne Avenue. The antisocial behavior there is very bad. CCTV cameras won't make a darn bit of difference to it. You can have as many CCTV cameras there as you like. It will not make a difference. Talk to Mandy, who runs the library. Her staff considers it an unsafe area, precisely because it's covered over. It's a wonderful place to do drug deals and street drinking and begging. We don't want another such place in West Ealing. Because it's unsafe, it fails the definition of a sustainable development. This is not a sustainable development.
30 seconds.
Finally, I'll mention heritage. I doubt that anyone's listening. We had 4 Art Deco buildings in West Ealing. One of them, our Woolworths, got demolished against public outcry. This will demolish 2 of the remaining 3. And the plans on the site show no appreciation of this. Just wipe them out. To hell with the residents and what they
Thank you very much. 3 minutes are up. Okay, so for the applicant, we have Mark Thompson. Again, have you been shown how to use the microphone? And you have 3 minutes, and I will tell you at 30 seconds out in your own time.
Thank you, and good evening, members. My name is Mark Thompson. I'm a director at Savills, and this evening I'm speaking on behalf of the developer, Luxgrove Capital Partners. I'd like to start by thanking the officers for all their hard work involved in this application, in particular their professional and well-considered report, and we welcome the recommendation to approve the application. From the outset, over the last few years, working with officers and stakeholders, we have sought to transform a site, an area that is underutilised and underperforming, to deliver a new vibrant quarter that can become a hub of activity, culture and life in West Ealing. The proposal seeks to contribute towards the delivery of the Council's vision for the West Ealing neighbourhood in supporting sustainable social and economic growth. I want to take this opportunity to highlight some of the key areas that we have focused on since consulting with the Council and the local community. The development will deliver 144 high-quality homes to meet an identified need, in particular 46 of these being affordable homes. These homes will allow people to continue to live in Ealing, and with a mix of homes, this extends from young professionals to families. The scheme has been revised with setbacks and stepping down to break down the massing and respond to context along the Broadway. The design by award-winning architects is of a high standard and carefully responds in terms of its massing and materials to reflect the local context. The design has also been developed through the Council's design and community review panels. In addition, it's exemplar in terms of climate change and addressing those matters with green roofs, new tree planting, flower-rich planting, and biodiversity net gain of over 645% and reduces carbon emissions by 70%. The scheme will create new spaces for creativity and collaboration, new public realm, improved flexible accommodation for commercial and community uses, as well as enhanced frontages and activity along the key streets, improving safety. The creation of a lively new quarter in West Ealing will improve the area for everyone, support existing and new businesses, and create opportunities for markets and events to celebrate the local community. Noting the public realm will be owned by Ealing, but maintained, as highlighted earlier. In response to objectives, and as the committee report outlines, we have taken steps to bring forward new public spaces that are flexible and safe, deliver as many new homes as possible to meet an identified and acute need, including having a mix of tenures, and we've rethought aspects of our design throughout the process to ensure that we do not encroach on our neighbours. The development is compliant with local, London plan and national planning policies in all respects. The application delivers significant social, economic and environmental benefits. The provision of new energy efficient, high sustainable homes that are needed for Ealing's residents, the creation of jobs on and off site, the investment into West Ealing and local infrastructure should be supported as per the officer's recommendation for approval. Thank you again for your time this evening, and we hope members support.
Thank you very much. Right, Okay. Olivia, is there anything you want to come back on in any of the objector or applicants?
Yes, so with
Yeah.
regard to CCTV, a contribution has been secured to help to improve the site. Also, with regard to antisocial behaviour, the scheme will be developed using secure by design principles and is in consultation with the Metropolitan Police, who are acutely aware of the existing situation at this site and neighbouring sites.
Okay, thank you. Right, opening up to questions. I'm going to go as they go. So as I see them, sorry this time. Pardon? Yeah. Let's go over here. Keep your hands up. I'll tell you when you've got. Start. Sorry, Councillor Shaw. Carry on.
Yes, sorry, Chair, just on a point here, I'm going to have to sit this one out, I'm afraid, as I do have a conflict of interest that I didn't realise Savills were representing. As in my declaration of interests, my wife works for Savills UK, so I think, you know, it's right for me just to step out and not contribute to this decision.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Shaw, yes. Right, let me read out who I've got in front of me. So I've got Councillor Gordon, Councillor Mahmood, Councillor Summers, Councillor Padder, Councillor Young, Councillor Driscoll, Councillor Kelly. Have I missed anyone? Right, in that order, I'll take them. Councillor Gordon.
Thank you, Chair. I want to ask questions on the affordable properties within this development, the 46 properties, 12 for social rent, 34 for shared. Both the GLA and the head of housing development, the council asked for a completely different mix of tenure, so a significantly more rental and less shared. Why has this been allowed to go through, or has this been sort of overridden in your paper?
Hold that, Olivia. I'll do 3 at a time, unless someone comes in with lots of multiple questions. Councillor Mahmood.
Thank you, Chair. If you see the recommendation of design review panel, they reminded you to get the sunlight survey in detail in order to effect the properties on the node. So have we reviewed that? That's the one. Second thing is in terms of biodiversity gain, are we increasing biodiversity, net biodiversity gain on site, or are we getting some sort of contribution to get biodiversity gain off site, please?
Right, okay, and Councillor Summers.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify what the officer was just saying about secured by design, because in the report it says on the consultation with Design Out Crime, we have not received any contact from the design team prior to this application being submitted, et cetera, we strongly recommend the applicant keep in regular contact with our office. I mean, it sounds like they haven't discussed, you know, you would have thought that would be one of the first things they do when they design it. So is it going to be a condition, you know, it will be a condition, I presume, that secured by design has to be built in before, you know, anything starts. And also on the same sort of question, lighting, is that going to be a condition? The actual, you know, the I don't know what the lighting equivalent of decibels is, but yeah, there will be enough lighting to, well, certainly discourage antisocial behaviour in that under area.
Sorry, should we take those, please? In the order if you can, in the order they came.
Thank you. So yes, I guess the first one's in response to Councillor Gordon. So yes, the proposed development, which would have 46 affordable homes or 139 affordable habitable rooms. It is noted that it doesn't meet the tenure split which the GLA would seek, or the local authority, or what Reg 19 seeks. So what we would want is a 60-40 split currently, and Reg 19 seeks a 70-30 split. What has to be taken into consideration, though, is that this scheme should more or less be looked at in line with the 60-40 split. So what we are getting is social rent, which is what the council would ideally want, and we would prefer to have 60%. What the GLA asks for is to have 30% social rent, 30% intermediate, and then the following 40% can be agreed by the local authority. So in this instance, it has been agreed that that 40% could be the intermediate product. It is still an affordable product, but I do note it's not the product which ideally we would want, which is social rent. The scheme previously was viability tested for a 141 unit scheme, and how that came out, it was going to provide a significantly lower level of affordable housing, which wouldn't have been considered acceptable. So following that and the revisions to the scheme prior to the application being submitted, it was considered that the proposal of 35% in our agreement, and bear in mind it still has to go back to the GLA for stage 2, is considered to be acceptable. And also the type of homes which are to be provided are predominantly 2-bed and 3-bed. With regard to Councillor Mahmood, sunlight and daylight, this has been reviewed. There was a slide, which details about this, and in particular the properties to the north. The site allocation for 12 stories would have seen the proposal impact the neighbouring development. The additional 4 stories in height is not considered to impact the development in such a way that would be uncommon for this type of development site, which is in a town centre. With regard to biodiversity, this would be on-site. It's not required of the applicant to do it due to when the application was submitted, but it would be providing 645% on-site, and this is also secured by way of planning condition. And thank you, Councillor Summers, for your point. Noted about the comments raised by the Metropolitan Police. This has been discussed with the developer, and that's why it was considered paramount to add it on as a condition, because we've seen the public outcry with regard to antisocial behaviour, and it's also important for the existing community and then also the new people who will be in these homes to ensure that they're living in a safe environment. With regard to lighting, there is a condition for that, and that's also as part of the landscaping for the site.
Okay, next up, I've got Councillor Padder.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a question on air quality. That's on page 147. It says the site is on an adopted road and is close proximity to an air quality focus area. Hence, future residents will be likely to be exposed to poor air quality. So I'm concerned on that. Can you clarify that? And also on the same subject, the applicant has produced an air quality assessment. That's the applicant is producing that, and I think we need to be very careful with this. We should have learned some lessons from Southall Gasworks, where the developer was producing the air quality. I think assessments on that one. It's just a comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Padder. Councillor Young next.
Thank you, Chair. I want to ask a question again about disabled parking provision. I believe that we're going to ask them to provide 4 on-street disabled parking spaces on Canberra Road as part of the development. but the requirement overall is to go for a further 10 spaces for disabled people, presumably on road. Why the difference between this application and the last one, when there was no such requirement?
I don't think you have to answer that.
And
Last one.
And will we be able to find spaces for 10 disabled bays within 250 metres of the development?
Just, you can comment on this application. Okay, and councillor Driscoll.
Yeah, just raising the point. I mean, it's because the question's being raised about the Design Act crime, which I think should have been part of the submission rather than as a condition. So I'm disappointed that that hasn't been put in there, but I've heard that question's been answered. Just in terms of, there's been a point made by the representations this evening about the nature of what maximum means in terms of height. Am I correct? And just to clarify, and also for myself and for the representations, it was the feedback from the planning inspector in terms of the definition and the use of the word of maximum and the guidance about that, rather than Ealing Council's use of that word in terms of the local plan. So just for clarifying who's using what language in terms of height. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Right, those three, please.
Okay, so with regard to air quality, and the site is on the Broadway, the front of the site, and that is a 20-mile-per-hour road. So by the council reducing the speed limit of it, it helps to reduce the impact of vehicles on residential accommodation. The air quality assessment has been reviewed by our internal experts. In order to mitigate this, there has been a financial contribution, as well as this, conditions with regard to ventilation, in particular the fresh air to habitable rooms, and that will be reviewed further were the application to be granted by way of discharge of condition. The 4 disabled parking spaces, yes, that's noted, that will be within the application site. There will be 10 additional spaces which will be paid for, and then your query about 250 metres of the site, that is something which can be discussed with our highways teams, but that would be the aim, to have disabled parking spaces which are in close proximity to the application site. Councillor Driscoll's comment on Design Out crime, and I think it was, I guess, similar to Councillor Summers, so thank you for that. And then just with regard to tall buildings, yes, I guess Ealing Council in our local plan have used the word maximum, and then what we've seen in some of the more recent responses, and in particular from the GLA, is that it doesn't necessarily need to be the word maximum. It can be appropriate, and if the site, I guess, allows for it. So we'll probably find out later on in terms of the inspector's review of the local plan of how that goes. But obviously you have this case before you, and that will precede that. So there's nothing more I can really say on that, unfortunately.
Okay. Right, I've got Councillor Kelly next.
Thank you. I don't think it's the question's been asked, but it almost felt like you were contradicting yourself. So maybe I need some more help with this. So you talked about the road being adopted by the council in the traditional sense, even though it's pedestrianised. But then you go on to say it's going to be maintained by the developer. Yeah, just help me out. What do we envisage happening in that space? Thank you.
There are no more indications for questions, so just that one, please. Well.
Okay, yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, so what I was saying in terms of adoption, so it is public highway, so it is pedestrianised, and that element of it remains the same. And what I was saying with regard to maintenance and ownership, the council would, if you can see my screen, so such as the paving here, we would still be maintaining that. The developer would be maintaining the proposed landscaping, such as the trees and the vegetation, as well as the seating areas. And I guess just looking at this one here, further along than the application site here, you can see seating, and then you can also see vegetation, which has been maintained. So it's just to ensure that, I guess, this doesn't happen and that vegetation remains at the site.
So to sum that up, it's whatever they put in, they maintain.
Yeah.
Basically.
For the perpetuity, yeah.
I was just going to point out, obviously, I know we've been referring to the other Sainsbury's site, but it's very different in scale compared to the site that you're being asked to look at. So I mean, as by comparison, I think what the image on the bottom left-hand side is essentially the front open area is the size of the site that you're dealing with tonight. So there is a big difference. The image on the right and where the library is located is some way away from the main road, which may explain some of the misuse of the spaces. So I think we need to just draw that in mind. I would assure you that the issues around house spaces are looked at in terms of antisocial behaviour, etc., has been a key consideration as part of the application evolvement. And in fact, you know, you also to make sure that the installed planting areas actually do work. They've been located so that they are open to the air. They're under, there's a canopy which will ensure that they are easy to maintain and landscaping work, which is very unlike what's actually happened in the other examples. And I would also point out there are lots of other examples where you've got these slight bridges over spaces which work perfectly acceptably without any antisocial behaviour. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that. And it's not unusual for like the very detailed elements of design considerations to be discussed later on. It's, you know, very detailed discussions that will be picked up, and the applicants would be encouraged to do that, whether it's by condition or by an informative. So that was, just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. Okay. I did have a question for the area itself underneath the amenity area. In terms of lessons learned, but you basically said what I was going to ask, which is about lessons learned from other areas, particularly west by the library, in terms of designing out crime. When you do have those discussions with the police, you know, that is the fear of people, whether that's real or not is not the point. It is there. So yeah, you've obviously heard what the committee have said about that in terms of when you have those discussions in terms of driving out crime. Okay, right, we're going to the debate. Those indicating, and when I catch their eye, I will go first. Councillor Gordon's first again. I don't know why I keep looking that way. Anyone on this side? Yeah. Go ahead, Councillor Gordon. Sorry. Well, keep your hands up. Those who hands up with those. Going.
Can I go, or are you still counting?
Yes, keep going. No, I'll keep counting when
Thanks,
you're talking.
I have so I think this is an area which is ripe for development. I think the existing buildings have been, the retail units have been a mishmash for donkey's years, and the buildings upstairs have been barely used. So I think this is an area which should be developed. However, I'm not remotely persuaded this is the right development for that space. And I've got three issues with it, which have been covered by officers, but I do want to highlight them. One is the tenure split. I know I'm not happy with it. I think we should have gone for much more social rent, and we know why they've gone for less social rent, because you make more return on your investment if you have less social rent. So I think it's a fairly cynical approach from the developer, and we should have gone for more social rent. We've got 35% of affordable rooms, but not affordable properties. So it's 32%. we should be aiming for 40, not just making do with 35 with the bare minimum of social rent, number one. Two, height. It's patently too tall. Two buildings of 16 and 14, where Reg 19, which is material to this, suggests 12 for this site, as the objector mentioned. It should be 12. The other buildings on the Uxbridge Road in West Ealing are at least 12 or below. So 16 and 14 are too high. And third is the one that Alex referred to, is this problem of the covered area. And the area around Sainsbury's, the library, is really important. This is immediately behind. It's been an area of antisocial behaviour, street drinking, begging, this unpleasantness for 2 decades. And the fact that we've got the police based above the supermarket, they still can't manage that situation. There is huge footfall because of the supermarket, the library, the flower cellar, the hotel. It's still an unpleasant, unsafe and grubby area to be. And I'm not remotely persuaded that this new covered area will be an improvement. So with that in mind, unlike the last objection where I was in two minds, I'm absolutely against this application. Thank you.
Councillor Mahmood.
Thank you, Chair. What I echo what my colleague councillor is mentioning about the height and the mass of the building. But on balance, I need to ask this question when I was asking a question with the officer. Yes, I have good concern. I just wanted to clarify why the linking building is very high. Is there any technical reason? I understand the two towers are going high, but the linking building should be reduced. That's my view on that. But if you have any clarification, that will be welcome. On the balance, I think that development will bring social, economical, and environmental a huge contribution in terms of Section 106. And what I can see in the report is we are reinvesting all the Section 106 money. And but the objector was saying about one of the objector about net biodiversity gain, but I could see the biodiversity gain is much higher than the existing situation is at the moment, and the very unusual thing I can see here is that not many developers producing or building 3-bedroom affordable houses, but now we will be getting 23, as far as I remember, 23 3-bedroom units, which is very welcome. So on the basis of, I think that will bring prosperity and enhance the area of this situation. So I will be minded to support that application.
Is there a technical reason for the yes or no, really, is the answer?
Yeah, it just forms as a link between the two. I guess you wouldn't want the building to be 14 meters all the way across, so it had to be lower. Yeah.
Okay. Right. No more questions. That's why we have questions round. Right. Okay. Councillor Busuttil.
Thank you, Chair. I've got no problems with the development per se, only the fact, and this is what Councillor Gordon has mentioned, is the 10-year split of the affordable. I think it's too weighted towards the shared ownership end, which in my view, being an owner of a shared ownership apartment, it did serve its purpose at one point as being affordable housing, but I don't think it does now. I think for the size of the development, it should be more towards the social rent side. And I think, again, for the size of the development, we could eke out something a bit better in that respect. I understand what the officer said, and that's, much appreciated, but I think we should push for something better in that respect. Now, because of that, I'm minded to go against the application. And furthermore, another thing is as well, I think the S106 money that's offered in comparison to the size of development is quite derisory. And again, I think we should push for something better there too. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Young.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with Councillor Gordon. I think there are major concerns about the height. Our plan talked about 12 stories. This is 16 stories. It's more than 30% more than what we were recommending as a maximum. The developers are just laughing at us. The other concern I've got is the covered area. That is going to be not only an eyesore, it's going to become a corridor of crime. We're building ourselves problems for the future. Have we learned nothing from the past? 20 years or more ago, we built what is there at the moment, and that causes us problems. This new proposal will create more problems. I vote against it.
Sorry, I'm gone for the vote. You're minded to vote against it, I think you mean. Yeah, okay. Right, Councillor Driscoll.
Thanks. Yeah, I think and the questions and the responses from the officer was helpful, clarify, and the planning inspectorate. So that phraseology and the use of that is not our questioning ourselves, it's coming from external. So that was helpful, given that was raised in the presentations to the committee this evening. The 1930s deco buildings, yes, they're poorly maintained. I've been inside them, they're poorly maintained inside as well. And the report says they're not listed and not recognised there. So I don't think that's a material issue, but I am disappointed about the split in terms of social rent and on the split of tenure. That's disappointing given the size of the development, given the scale of the development and our aim in our local plan to have a lower level rise, although tall buildings, but lower than this. I think this is going above by some extent to what we're aiming for. So those two issues in combined, that tenure split and the height, then I'm minded at present not to support.
Okay, Councillor Summers.
Yeah, I heard what Councillor Gordon said, and I have some sympathy with what he's saying. And I also support what Councillor Driscoll was saying about the London living rent. Ideally, I would have wanted at least 20 London living rent homes in there. But it is what it is. We've got to judge it on what it is. And on the question of the this under pathway, it's obviously not an entire building. It's just a sort of bridge-sized part. And I think it's slightly unfair that if this were in another part of the borough, maybe sort of Ealing Broadway or Ealing Central Ealing or Ealing Common or Hanger Lane or whatever, we wouldn't be discussing it all. It's only because that area has become a bit of a magnet for antisocial behaviour that we have this issue. So, I mean, technically, I mean, it's not really a planning matter. It's a social problem which we need to, the council needs to deal, and the police needs to deal with on a separate occasion. So, and I am satisfied to some extent by the conditions about lighting and secured by design. So it's a very difficult decision, but I think on balance, I am going to support.
Councillor Kelly.
Yeah, sort of expand Councillor Summers' point that he made there at the end. This thing about antisocial behaviour, it exists along the spine of the Uxbridge Road and hot spots, whether it be Hanwell Acton, Southall, and in fact Greenford Broadway, which is not on the Uxbridge Road, but similar problems. It's a societal issue that needs to be addressed, multi-agency, multi-factored approach. I don't believe a particular canopy 100 metres away from Sainsbury's is going to necessarily be a magnet for extra antisocial behaviour. And I think the officer sort of outlined the approach the developer's taken with this, and I'm quite optimistic. What are we aiming for when it comes to height remains, in a sense, an unanswered question. There doesn't seem to be a set height or a set story, but this application has come forward as being legitimate, lawful, meeting criteria in terms of space and planning. So we have to consider it. Councillor Mahmood was asking about the link in how many stories it would be, and then he went on to talk about how he appreciated there being 3 bedrooms, and perhaps it's because of that, all of those linked of a certain height, that there is going to be 3 bedrooms. So we can't have 3 bedrooms and bring down the scale that easily, and to make it commercially viable. Tenure mix is referred to. Councillor Gordon makes some excellent points, and has other councillors have, about the tenure mix, but I don't believe it's, we'll all have a different idea about what the perfect tenure mix is, but I don't believe it's grounds for us to reject this application. The greater good is we need to redevelop West Ealing Broadway. West Ealing Broadway, it was my local shopping centre. It was a jewel in the crown along the Uxbridge Road, with all the department stores and some of the Art Deco design. Retail is depressed, and I think we need to look at high streets in a different prism. We need to get people living on the high streets, so they will shop in the high streets, because that will be the place at the bottom of their lift shaft. I will shop downstairs because there's shops downstairs. So we have to get people living on the high street. People want to live on high streets. It's worked elsewhere. It works in central London. There's no reason why it won't work in West Ealing. So the size is a challenge. It's a challenge to Ealing's landscape and what we've done in the past. But I see the height working, and it becomes part of the town centre. It's a nice design. Design is subjective, so I will be minded to grant the application.
Thank you, councillor Kelly. Right, don't think there's any other indications. Just for me, I concur with a lot of what councillor Kelly has said tonight. Just on tenure split, yes, it's disappointing, but we have in front of us an application that gives us 12 social rented family sized accommodation, 9 of those being 3 bedroom, 3 being 2 bedroom. Despite what people think, that is a family sized accommodation. And should we be minded not to have that, we do not have these 4 people going forward, and on top of the shared ownership which is there, and whether you like that model or don't like that model, it's still considered as affordable housing. As for the covered area, I don't think covered area or uncovered area makes any difference in terms of antisocial behaviour. Antisocial behaviour is going on everywhere, in parks, in high streets, actually in my road. There's heroin addicts in my road. So, it doesn't really matter where that is. It is going on. Perhaps if we had some more support from more officers on the streets, it might help. But that's another issue. And height for me, I think I sort of made my views known on the last one. This one I think is a better design building than the last one, and I have no problem with the height on this building. So I think I've addressed in what I think the committee have made their big concerns on tonight, and I would like to see the result of the discussions between the police and the officers on the area to try and work out any nuances of how to design any potential crime out of that area. But anyway, on balance, I will be going to the vote. Okay, all those in favour, please indicate. So 8, we've counted. All those against? 4. All those abstain, just for clarity, any abstentions? Right, okay, that application has been passed. Thank you very much. The next committee meeting is, come on, someone tell me quickly.
5th of June.
5th of June. Hopefully the weather's a bit better by then.